Foreign Talk from IMN. Today we are very pleased to have His Excellency Mr. Ramon Blecua, Ambassador of European Union Delegation to Iraq. Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for your time and welcome to our program.
Pleasure to be with you again.
Thank you, dear sir. We had the pleasure of meeting you last year, and I believe unfortunately the last couple of days for you in Iraq. If you look back for your mission and your objectives, how much percentage you can give us for what you have achieved or to what you wish to be achieved?
Well, it's true that now I'm at the end of my post.
Unfortunately.
I will be leaving in a few days.
Yes, sir.
But I think this last year has been very eventful, and despite the different crises and we have lived through and the difficult situation in the region,
Yes,
and the tensions, Iraq has really made great progress, and there's been significant strides forward. And for me in particular, as EU ambassador, there's been, I think, very important developments. Of course, it all had been crowned with the visit of High Representative Federica Mogherini,
Yes,
and very important meetings and discussions with our Iraqi counterparts.
Yes,
And I think a very important joint declaration in which we set the roadmap for the future development of this partnership between Iraq and the European Union. I think from last year, if I'm not mistaken, it was just after the Kuwait conference, and we were all trying to gear up also after the elections. So Iraq was a bit on the beginning of a new political cycle.
Yes, sir.
I think the formation of the government, launching of some important initiatives, and the beginning of the process of reconstruction and economic reforms, they're all, I think, very important steps for Iraq. It was not an easy process, of course. It was a lengthy and pretty much delayed government formation process.
Correct.
But I think at the end, the maturity of the Iraqi political leaders, the solidity of the system, of the democratic institutions have prevailed, and we can see that Iraq now has a government that is taking more and more initiatives in the region, that is considered, that is listened to by its regional partners, and that is playing an important role in trying to find solutions, political solutions for the problems of the region.
Excellent. So you think today Iraq stands much better than last year this time?
I think Iraq
there is a progress, even though it's slow, but there is a progress.
I fully agree with you. I think there's progress.
All right.
Of course, when a country faces so many challenges, I understand that there is a lot of anxiety sometimes, and everybody's in a hurry to see results.
Definitely, because of the suffering they have been through, obviously.
And everybody deserves, of course, better governance, better economic opportunities.
Yes, sir.
And it's rightly so that the Iraqi public opinion is demanding that from the political leaders. And we will certainly be glad to see faster progress and more results. But I think also we have to be aware of the challenges of where we are coming from, of how the situation was 2 years ago, when Iraq was really on still the brink of many different crises, internal, external.
Yes,
we all thought that there were tremendous risks in Iraq's way to prosperity and for a better future. And I think that today we're still, of course, at risk. The region is on the verge of very dangerous confrontation. We had recently some examples even that have touched Iraq with all these explosions.
Iraq always in the middle of things. He's not part of it, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, you cannot change geography.
Unfortunately, fact, yeah.
It's part of Iraq's, I think, trials and challenges
Correct.
to be in the middle of things. But I think we're also lucky that Iraq is in the middle of things, in the sense that it's playing a very constructive role. Iraq's voice is the voice of reason, is the voice of dialogue. It's trying to convince, I think, some of its regional neighbors that dialogue and further cooperation, regional cooperation,
Yes, sir.
is a much better path than going to war. And I think that, of course, Iraq has had a painful experience in the past, knows the cost of war, knows what comes from it. And I think it is an example that others should listen to and heed that advice gained from experience.
We will touch base on this in details later on in our conversation, but if we stay with the Iraqi situations, you have mentioned, Your Excellency, that the situation has improved. There is a project, there is development, even though it's slow, but there is a progress. If we're talking about your personal experience, unfortunately you had water poisoning in Basra. You laugh.
Yes.
It was a very painful, unfortunate situation. If we look back now, and you think you personally, obviously you are very much involved with the politicians, with the people, with the society. You think Basra situation now, as far as electricity or water service, is better than last year?
Well, I've been to Basra several times
Yes, sir.
since that unfortunate incident.
Yeah, unfortunate incident.
But
that's a fact.
also an incident that made me really realize
Yes,
the kind of problems that the people in Basra
Yeah.
are facing.
They live with, unfortunately.
When you live
Yeah,
with that,
correct.
mine was one of
Correct.
90,000 people
Mhm.
that suffered the same problem.
Yes, sir.
So when I was there, I was listening to people, and they were saying, well, you know, unfortunately, my case became rather famous because,
Obviously.
you know,
your position.
of my position.
Obvious.
But we should not forget that there were 90,000
The people
Basrawis
suffer.
suffering, going to
Correct.
hospital. I mean, it's really, I mean,
Very
painful. It's not
Very
like
painful.
it's life-threatening or anything, but it's something that in one of the richest cities in the world
unfortunately, yes.
that could be and should have
Mhm.
the best infrastructure,
It
the best
became-
services.
This fortune, it became their curse in a way.
Well, I think it's a mixture of questions, of problems. I think they've been, of course, the result of wars, uprising,
Yeah,
decades of neglect.
correct.
We shouldn't forget that
Correct.
infrastructure investment in Iraq has been very, very low for
Yes.
decades.
Okay. Fact.
So we are now suffering also the result of those
correct.
many years in which the needed investment was not done, population has grown, and the result of wars and of internal strife had taken a toll. So I think now that's not an excuse also for politicians and public officials not to provide the solutions, because the solutions are there and the solutions can be done. It's a matter of providing services. It cannot be done in 1 year, cannot be done immediately.
But at least you have to start somewhere. Show the people you are doing something,
Correct.
isn't it? This is from Iraqi
Correct.
perspective. It's,
Correct.
yeah.
I fully agree.
I absolutely agree. You are working and you're going to make a progress, and there is something will be done in the long term. But in the short term, show me something. I will, okay, last year it's very bad. This year is a little bit better. So I know you are
But
doing
we
something.
still have a problem. There is still a problem, and I discussed this with the local authorities,
Yes,
with
sir.
the governor, with the ministries, in implementation capacity,
Yes, sir.
in service delivery. There is a problem in the management side. And I think, and I discussed also, and I don't know if I mentioned this in our last meeting, that there are many problems. Corruption is one, but for me, mismanagement.
It's the core of all the
It
disasters.
is much more serious and threatening for
Okay.
everyday service delivery in Iraq. The waste, you know, when you go to Basra and you see the gas is being flared, you know, it's like burning money.
Correct.
So waste is a very important element as well. So I think we are trying and we are working with our Iraqi counterparts, and one of the things we actually did, and you were asking me about our achievements,
Yes, sir.
launching the public finance management program with the government of Iraq, I think was a very important step. And also we signed another agreement with the Ministry of Oil and the Ministry of Electricity for energy sector reform.
All right.
So we are working together with the government. We are putting some, I think, useful tools at their disposal, and we need to work also on the long term.
All right.
I understand that there are urgent matters. There's emergencies. Basra situation was an emergency. Mosul situation is an emergency, but I think we have to work at the same time on the long term, and these long-term reforms remain critical for the future of Iraq. Because if you are having problems now with service delivery, with the kind of population increase and the demands that the citizens have, you need to make sure that you are prepared to really answer to that. Otherwise, these problems will be multiplied in a few years.
Correct. You have said, you have mentioned, Your Excellency, that you have signed a couple of agreements with the Iraqi government. There is any investments from your side on the ground in cities in Iraq? And if there is, which cities are?
Well, we actually signed more than two. I mentioned these specific two projects that we had with the World Bank and the government.
All right.
But we did have several financing agreements signed with the Ministry of Planning.
All right.
Actually, I have to say, and I'm very grateful to my colleagues, our development team, because we are practically about to implement 100% of our pledges in the conference in Kuwait, of the 400 million that High Representative pledged in that conference.
Yes.
They are nearly committed, and by December this year, they will be 100% committed.
Excellent.
So I think this is really a proof that our engagement, our commitment with Iraq is serious, is a long-term endeavor, is a partnership, and we are ready to deliver from our side. And now I just come from a meeting with the foreign minister, and we were discussing the implementation of the partnership and cooperation agreement. We have several important subcommittees on energy, on economy, on the human rights, on migration, on political dialogue, on security and counterterrorism. And these are going to be the tracks on which we are going to build for the future. Because Iraq does not need assistance. I think what Iraq needs is partnerships and is economic and political partnerships.
Excellent. So this contribution from European Union, if may I ask, there will be channels, certain channels, because you have just mentioned earlier the corruption issues and unfortunately we are facing in our daily life. There will be certain channels. You make sure this money is going to the right, you know what I mean?
No, absolutely. Well, I think in our projects, of course we have very strict controls in terms of auditing, but they go very much straight to the beneficiaries. We have implementing partners. Sometimes they are UN agencies, sometimes they are, can be the World Bank, financial institutions, or Iraqi NGOs or international NGOs, depends.
Yes, sir.
And those funds are going to go basically to job creation,
yes, sir.
Private sector development, delivery of service, local governance and development, security sector reform. So they are pretty much going into their directly to their implementing partners. Yes, we don't have big infrastructure projects, and that's where sometimes most of the corruption problems arise, because there are big budgets, and then you have implementation of the works that offer maybe more possibilities for some people to take advantage personally of that. Yes, but in our case, I think our projects go very much oriented to improving governance and service delivery. So it's not the size of the project that really matters. I mean, there are other billions being spent in infrastructure in many other sectors. In our case, it's more of a very targeted assistance to improve the government capacity to actually implement policies. That is where we're trying to concentrate. And the other side is about job creation, improving economic activity. We think that agriculture is one of the sectors that have been neglected for a long time. I think agriculture is one of the strong sectors with growth potential in Iraq.
Yes, sir.
I mean, agriculture was probably invented here. And
We were the first,
and
but unfortunately we are the last now.
you should not forget that agriculture remains a very important economic sector
Yes, sir.
for job creation
Correct.
and for development
Correct.
and for sustainable development.
Correct.
Because agriculture, rightly managed, contributes also to better water management.
Correct.
That's one of the problems Iraq has, decrease in levels of water.
Yes.
So you need to improve the irrigation systems and the water management
Correct.
techniques. So that is all linked.
Correct.
So I think by investing in agriculture, you actually address many different areas.
You will create new jobs, new
Renewable
opportunities,
energy.
yeah.
Renewable energy
Correct.
is an important, very important sector.
Correct.
Because it will allow, first of all, private citizens to enter themselves also into power generation for
Yes,
their
sir.
own use and also as a private investment
Correct.
for the private activity,
Correct.
and liberates also resources for export. You
Yes,
can actually increase the government resources.
Correct. You export
So-
some of your
Most oil-producing countries are
Yes.
actually investing heavily in renewables.
all right. Yeah.
And I think Iraq
New energy.
future
should will be for it. Yes.
should really go that
Yes, sir.
direction.
Yeah.
I know the Minister of Electricity has presented us several initiatives that we are supporting, but of course a lot more has to be done
Correct.
in developing renewables. But it will provide immediate relief also for those IDPs, for population
That's
in the
my
liberated
question,
areas
actually. Yes, sir.
that have no access to electricity.
Correct.
And
Unfortunately.
renewables is very flexible. You have sun everywhere.
Mhm.
Oil may be concentrated in a few regions or a few provinces,
Areas, correct.
but sun
Everywhere,
all over the
especially
place.
in our weather, in our location, always very hot, even in
Anbar
winter.
or Niniwa or
Correct.
Salahuddin.
Yeah.
I mean, like you can
The
you
south,
can really
you
have
can see the south, the temperature is
south.
absolutely,
I mean,
yeah.
like in Basra.
Basra,
Okay,
correct.
situation now is better because there's
Right.
been, I think, 3,500 more megawatts
Megawatt.
added to the.
Correct.
But also, the problem is the problems of the networks. You have tremendous amount
Distribution.
of waste in the distribution.
Distribution, yes.
And this is something that requires attention. But
Yeah.
by using renewables and solar energy, sometimes you reduce the size of your problems.
Correct.
So it makes it easier for the ministry also to address.
To tackle other
So you
other
get
sides.
income on one side, reduce the size of the problem, and
Yes, sir.
improve the service to the citizens. So
Correct.
if you promote that, you will be addressing several of the key challenges at once.
This money also will be allocated for the liberated area. As you know, it has been unfortunately big
Yes.
big areas there has been damaged and destroyed. Some of them completely, Mosul
True.
and otherwise.
I have said very clearly that
Yes, sir.
we will not finance the reconstruction
Yes, sir.
of the liberated areas because it's not only we don't have the resources,
Mhm.
it's not also our function.
Mhm.
But we are trying to create specific action plans with integrated initiatives, partly centered in Niniwa province as
Yes,
one
sir.
of our pilot projects, and another one in Basra. Basically, to create models that can be then replicated all the way
Yes, sir.
in other areas. Because as I said, the problem in Iraq is not a problem of resources. It's sometimes a problem of management.
Mhm.
It's a problem of waste. It's a problem of inefficiency in the execution of those policies. So what we want is to work together with our Iraqi counterparts at the local level, federal level, and really help them to create more successful management models.
So,
I think once that's it done, Iraqi resources are enough to do the reconstruction.
so you help
I
them
said-
to help themselves.
Yeah, and as I said, it is the private sector that can do
Yes,
that.
sir. Yes.
The private sector has the capacity to really rebuild infrastructure, economic networks,
Yes, sir.
business,
Mhm.
and offer jobs. The state can only create the conditions for that.
Correct.
But Iraqi businessmen are very successful everywhere else. They should be successful in their own country.
Correct. Kindly, our dear ambassador, will take a short break and then we'll continue our conversation.
With
Thank
pleasure.
you very much. We'll take a short break. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Mr. Ambassador, we have touched base earlier on reconstructions of Iraq, and you have mentioned your money will be allocated and distributed all over Iraq. As far as our relationships as nations between the European Union people and the Iraqi people, as far as cultural and artistical programs to build more bridges, are you working also, your mission is also working in that aspect also?
Cultural bridges, I think they're essential. They're the basis of the relationship between people, and I think that there's so much between Iraq and Europe throughout history, and now the fact that so many Iraqis go and study in European universities already creates these bridges. You know, education, I think, is one of the keys. For the future and for making people understand each other better. There's so much, sometimes, lack of knowledge about what is going really on in Iraq, because everybody remembers only the drama, the war, the terrorist attacks, Daesh. You know, it's always like there's been a sort of narrative that has remained as
classic.
Iraq is the
as
land
far as
of
Iraq, there is a
conflict.
problems. Yes.
Iraq is the land of culture. Iraq is the land of archaeological wonders. Is so rich in terms of tradition, in terms of art, in terms of music, in terms of all sort of cultural creations. That is something that has not been sufficiently underlined. And it remains also.
Who you blame in this? You think it's like
I
media maybe?
Well, I think, no, I don't think media is to blame. Media,
because I know you people
media gets the news that are really
fed to them.
there.
Yeah.
So if we don't offer them good stories.
Correct. But I know your delegation has done a couple of workshops and
we have done, and one of the things.
But the picture is not out there to everybody. It's just for very few selective people. They know about your activities.
No, it's also true, but because it has not been either our biggest priority. Because, because when you have so many challenges,
Correct.
so many security issues, so many problems on stability for Iraq and for the region, it's true that we have concentrated on these urgent matters, and we have not had enough resources, people and budget to promote at the same level cultural exchanges. We are working on it, and we have Erasmus, we have Horizon 2020, we are working with the universities, we are trying to really encourage these exchanges, but more should be done, and I agree that this is a pending duty for the future, that we really promote this kind of cultural events. And I hope that also from our member states, this cultural dimension is also developed further. I was very happy to see that the Cervantes Institute, the Spanish Cultural Institute, opened a delegation with the French Cultural Institute. You know, this kind of cooperation between member states. And in the same building also, the German Goethe Institute also has. It's,
we didn't know that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So there is these initiatives in which...
There is no publicity. Why is that?
I think because...
there are people interested in such a thing.
Too often we have so many crises every day.
That's a fact, but the ultimate goal is the people, I believe. All this
goes a bit in the
aside.
backlog. In the backlog.
You put them aside, yeah.
But yes, these things are being done. These things are exist.
All right, okay.
And the revival, the cultural revival of Baghdad, for me, is one of the great news.
Excellent.
That great stories that have to be
All right.
told.
Told to the people, correct.
I went to Suleimaniya. I saw this incredible cultural initiative in the tobacco factory, where people are really building one of the most interesting cultural centers in the Middle East. But people don't know about it.
Correct.
So,
correct. Yeah, I think this
wanted-
miscommunication in a way is lost in the translation, so to speak.
yeah, unfortunately, priorities sometimes leave culture a bit lower in the list.
Unfortunately, yeah.
But I wanted to put this as part of the European Union Day celebrations.
Yes, sir.
And
And that will be when?
And I talked to the...
Done
no,
already?
we had it in, on the 16th
You had
of
it?
June. Do you
Oh,
remember?
I didn't know that. So I'm in the media. I don't know that. Unfortunately, yeah.
We have
missed
to
it.
talk to our present information to,
sorry.
to
sorry.
keep you
What do you mean?
more updated.
Keep you
Saying
informed.
there is
Huh?
work to be done. No, we had two important workshops.
Yes,
One was on gender equality,
All right.
because we are doing a project with the American University of Suleimaniya,
All
the
right.
Center for Gender Studies,
Uh-huh.
and on agriculture and sustainable development.
Yes, sir.
We had the pleasure of having First Lady, the wife of the President, participating and giving a keynote speech. So this was to be also complemented by an exhibition in cooperation with this cultural center in Suleimaniya.
All right.
But finally, we couldn't put it together. It was a bit logistically complex
All right.
to organize an exhibition in the right conditions with the kind of quality that they wanted. We didn't have enough time. Although the Ministry of Culture gave us full support, well, maybe you don't know. We held for the first time Europe Day at the cultural complex, Al Mansour Cultural Complex.
I didn't know that.
It was recently inaugurated by the
And I follow
Ministry
your
of
page,
Culture.
your face page.
Then you have to see it.
I don't know. Yeah, it's my mistake.
But we wanted to do it in this cultural center,
All right.
precisely to underline the importance
of
that the
the
cultural revival
aspect, yeah.
in Iraq
Yes, sir.
has.
Excellent.
Not only the political
It's
or
a
the
message,
economic
basically.
reforms are important. Culture is really booming. It's really
Excellent.
becoming something that normal Iraqi citizens can enjoy
All right.
in safety.
Excellent. Yeah.
So we had a very, for the first time we came out of the compound and made it open.
Interact with the people.
And we have like over 800 people coming
Wow, that's
to
a
the
big
different-
event. Yeah.
to the different activities.
All right.
We presented the Hawar, that is one of the projects for youth empowerment
All right.
and coexistence and dialogue.
Nice. Very
So
nice.
they performed, they had a multiple music group
All right.
performing Kurdish music and
Excellent.
Arabic music
It's
and
a
different
beautiful
things.
culture, mixed culture.
So we are trying to keep the culture into the mix
All right.
and make sure that it's not forgotten. As a culture is not a luxury. Culture is not a hobby. It's not entertainment. Culture is at the heart of all human relations.
That's a fact. Absolutely correct.
So I think you have to reivindicate also the important cultural role that Iraq has and
Correct.
had
Correct.
for
centuries.
millennia.
So, correct. That's absolutely correct. Your Excellency, I cannot help myself. When I talk to you now, it's different feeling. You give me the vibes, or you very much enjoy Iraq. You enjoy the people. And that's a fact. It's personal impression. I just want to address it in front of everyone. Last year, there was some conservative approach towards the Iraqis and the Iraq. I know, I understand, I respect the gloomy future we had that period of time. Situation are improving in a way. Let me put it straight to you. If you are very optimistic towards our relationship as a European Union and the Iraqis, well, this will be impact on the visa issue for Iraqis. That's my question. And everybody's question, why the Iraqis, they face obstacles? I won't say problems, I'm diplomat.
No.
Why is that?
I think the question is very,
Yes, sir.
is very legitimate. And
Thank you, sir.
I think there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Because of the hardship of recent years, many Iraqis had to flee from their country.
Correct.
Many of them try to find a better life in Europe.
That's a
Some
fact.
of them legally, some of them illegally.
Fact.
So illegal immigration remains a big problem.
In Europe.
It
Through Europe.
remains an internal political issue for many European countries.
Correct.
And it's now part of the debate
Mhm.
and is questioning many of the welfare states that was built in
That's
Europe
basically my question, my
And-
next question.
and how you
Yeah.
share
Yes.
that
Responsibilities, yes.
prosperity and responsibilities with others.
Correct.
So because of that, there's an immediate reaction.
Mhm.
Restrict the traveling that creates maybe chances for illegal immigration.
All right.
And that affects many people that are legitimate travelers
Correct.
with legitimate intentions and want to just
Maybe treatment, maybe tourists,
travel
maybe,
for many different reasons.
Correct.
So-
correct.
I think we have to address this issue in two ways. First, Iraq is not a poor country. Iraq is not a country that rationally is a source of immigration,
Correct.
because it has many resources, it has the capacity to
I think
develop
it
them.
was the opposite. So many nations used to come to Iraq.
Exactly, until very recently. So
Oh.
Iraq never had a problem with it.
Correct.
But the problem exists. So we have to address the migration issue.
Yes, sir.
We have to manage it properly,
Mhm.
resolve our part of the problem,
Correct.
because I also tell my Iraqi counterparts, you also can help us. It's not only European Union that helps you. We have certain problems and you can help us to solve them. Well, migration management is one of them, and we have made progress. We have now a migration dialogue that is ongoing, and I think in a very good spirit. And the idea will be that, you know, and the Iraqi government wants to offer the Iraqis better chances than the uncertainty of illegal immigration, that at the end of the day benefits mostly the human traffickers
Correct.
and not so much the people that are looking a
Correct.
better life.
Yeah, correct.
So I think this is one of the areas in which we can improve. And the other ones, I think as soon as Iraq can really offer better job opportunities
Mhm.
for Iraqis, Iraqis will find a much better way of life working in the country. And those who will like to work outside or to establish themselves in Europe will be able to do it without any problem through the legal channels.
My question was for the people that are going to travel there for visit, for tourism, for treatment, for example. We're going to different countries, and as you mentioned earlier, Iraqis do have money. That's a fact. They have money,
Absolutely.
and they want to enjoy themselves. They want all over the place. But when they go to Europe, any countries in Europe, they will face the difficulties, even though they submit their documents, whatever needed, bank statements, all these issues.
Yeah,
So you say there will be, hopefully, future will be better
I think
for these people.
I think if we manage to solve the current situation, the backlog we have
All right.
of illegal cases, that will help enormously to ease also the restrictions.
Mhm.
Because if we have a way to handle whatever problems may happen, there will be much less restrictions.
All
Because until now the problem is we have to prevent the problem from happening.
Correct,
So that affects a lot of people that should not be affected.
correct.
So I think if we address things in both ways, very soon the situation can be greatly improved. Also, security questions have been a factor
Correct, absolutely, yes.
because of the threat that Daesh posed. Every country also
Of course,
wanted
take
to
precautions.
have additional precautions.
Mhm.
So I think both issues now are slowly being resolved or
All right,
changed.
excellent.
So I think that will have an effect also on the other issue.
You have to touch base, Your Excellency, on the immigration, legal and illegal immigrant to Europe. European Union as a union addressing the issue, because we see individual cases. For example, in Germany, we see one of the ministers have decided to deport some of the Syrian people. So my question is, are you guys have guideline for European? I understand sovereignties, but that's absolutely right. Leave alone the hardship and difficulties, humanitarian hardship and difficulties. Most of these people, they went through to arrive to that point. Some of them, they lost their lives, their loved ones. So how the future, there is any revision for your policy towards the future?
Listen, I think that there were very important words from, I think, the president of the Commission
Yes, sir.
when the initial crisis on immigration started.
Yes, sir.
And he said, you know, we should not forget that
Mhm.
Europe is also a continent of emigrants.
Correct.
People that went and found jobs and
Better life.
better lives
Correct.
in America, in Africa, in Asia, all over.
Correct. Correct.
So I think Europe has a very generous system of accepting foreigners in many different ways.
Mhm.
But recently, the problem is we have been overwhelmed by the size of the
Correct. The
Of-
gravity of the situation.
of this
is,
of these migration flows
yeah, thousands
that
of thousands.
suddenly have become unmanageable for our systems.
Correct.
So we need to adapt.
Mhm.
Some of our previous guidelines may not be applicable anymore
Yes, sir.
because, for example, the asylum practices have been completely drowned by many of these also economic migrants that, well, the first thing they say is like, I want to apply for asylum because it's the easiest way. So we have a problem of the instruments and the institutions and the services that can handle this that are overwhelmed.
Yes, sir.
How we can do that? I mean, I think the first issue is our security, our stability depends on the prosperity and the resilience of our neighbors.
Absolutely.
So at the end of the day, the only way to solve this is by strengthening our neighbors. We have a neighborhood policy, I
Mhm.
think, that tries to address these matters. And one of the reasons why, when people ask me, so why the European Union has to help Iraq, that's a rich country, say because our security, our prosperity depends on Iraq being successful,
Yes, sir.
on Iraq offering security and better economic opportunities for its citizens.
Correct.
So we are helping ourselves.
Mhm.
But yes, there is a change now in the whole policy.
Mhm.
I also do have to say
Yes, sir.
that for me, the migration debate in
Mhm.
Europe sometimes is manipulated for political reasons.
Mhm. The
There's-
election period is different.
There are certain political forces that
Yes.
prefer migration to be the center of debate
Mhm.
instead maybe of wealth distribution,
Correct.
instead of other social issues.
Mhm.
So by creating this sort of problem,
Mhm.
I mean, it's not that you created it, but you
Yeah,
blow
it's
it
there, but you
out of proportion.
Mhm.
You know, that's why populist parties do. That's what they normally, why they thrive in this kind of
Yeah,
situations.
Correct, but they're winning. They're winning
But
because
is
they're
it-
tackling the right
But
nerve in a way.
But sometimes it's not as real.
That's
You
unfortunate.
know,
yes.
we had occasions in which sometimes it was even used within European countries.
Yes, sir.
Remember this campaign against the Polish plumber
Yes, sir.
in France,
In
you know,
France, correct.
or in Britain, it did play a part during the Brexit debate, like, you know, the weight of the European immigration, like European citizens establishing
Immigrant.
and being a load for the welfare system or for the job market in different countries.
Correct.
So migration is sometimes used politically for, I think, reasons that are not the declared or stated concern for the welfare of the citizens, but sometimes for other agendas.
Okay.
So I think we should put migration also in perspective and not make it the kind of issue that should be the center of all our thoughts. I think there are much more important issues on the growth of inequality
Mhm.
and the deterioration sometimes of democratic institutions
Mhm.
or the legitimacy of the institutions, and I think those are sometimes much more important issues.
Very complex situations. We'll take kindly another short break and we'll be continuing our conversation. We'll be taking a short break. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Your Excellency, we don't have much time. Unfortunately, I know you're very busy and we're very grateful for your time. Once again, we will touch base kindly on the terrorist and terrorism issues. As you know, some of the terrorists has been captured by the Iraqi and even the Americans. I heard a statement earlier by President Trump is in a way, I don't know, advising, threatening the European people. If they don't take their people, they will send them back. The terrorists, they has been captured in Syria. There is comprehensive agreement or understanding between the Iraqi government and the European Union as far as their citizen is concerned, has been captured, obviously with such a crime. You people, the European Union will take their people back. What the solutions will be?
Well,
for their future.
The position that the European Union countries have taken,
yes,
that I think similar to many of the rest of the international community,
yes,
is that the crimes committed by terrorists, in particular the Daesh crimes,
yes,
should be tried in the place where they were committed.
All right.
So that is a principle also that has inspired the establishment of the UNITAD, you know, to this UN body that will gather evidence for...
they operate in Iraq currently for a couple of months now, yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
The question concerning particular EU citizens,
yes,
is not in our competence. Is each member state...
because we see Germany has pulled a couple
yes,
of...
Yes, it's not the European Union that has responsibility
individual
for
cases,
that,
right.
because anything, you know, the consular protection
yes,
is something that remains within the member states' powers and authorities.
Okay.
So we don't intervene directly on that. There's of course discussions in the EU framework in which, of course, the EIS tries to always promote a joint position and according to the values that the European Union defends and respect for the human rights and legal process and rule of law. But besides that, we don't have really direct participation in this kind of discussions.
Okay. Okay. So, let's move on to another subject. That's the, I don't know what you call it, crisis, predicament between the United States and Iran. Where the European Union stands in such a, I don't know, unfortunate situation.
Our position there is very clear.
Yes,
during the visit of High Representative Federica Mogherini, our message was reiterated very much in line with the Iraqi government position.
Yes,
and I think both Minister Al-Hakim and Federica Mogherini reiterated the full agreement from both our sides on the need to prevent military escalation and to find diplomatic solutions for this crisis. We defend the JCPOA, the nuclear agreement, as the best instrument at our disposal to guarantee that there will be no nuclear proliferation in the region. We are very much aware this is not a magic wand that resolves all the problems. And there are other issues that have to be addressed concerning the regional situation, the interference in other countries' affairs, military conflicts of all different sorts. But in that we have a difference with the US position in the sense that they have opted for a policy of maximum pressure, trying to influence Iran behavior. We believe that dialogue has proven to be more successful in bringing Iran into constructive agreements, as the JCPOA has proven. And that is what the E3 plus the EU, Germany, Britain and France actively promote. And we hope that this remains an alternative for the international community. We are very concerned about the prospects of instability and tensions. We think, and we agree with what the Iraqi authorities have said, if a war starts in the region, we will all be losers.
Definitely.
There will be no winners.
Fact.
So I think it's in nobody's interest to really push the regional countries further into conflict. During the visit of Federica Mogherini, there was discussions on this initiative that Iraq has presented of a regional conference for promoting cooperation and integration.
Awesome.
We fully support that. We think that common interests are really the best antidote against conflict, because if countries have a better prospect
Yes, sir.
by working together in developing transport networks, water resources, energy flows, investment and trade,
Correct.
you know,
It's win-win
the
situation.
other problems can be managed,
Correct.
because everybody will realize that it's not in any of their neighbors' interest
Yes, sir.
to undermine the position of any other country.
The other side. Correct.
So I think what happened in Europe could happen in Iraq or in the Middle East. And President Saleh, during his speech to the Suleimaniya Forum participants,
Yes, sir.
mentioned this. Like, the European Union is a project that comes out of a war.
Correct.
And he said, the Middle East have seen enough wars.
Correct.
So if Germans and French, after fighting for 100 years, can
Okay, for
get
century,
together and
correct.
found an institution
Common ground.
that then becomes the foundation of the European Union, why not the countries in the region?
That's
So
often-
this is
sorry.
the power of
Sorry.
common interests
Yes, sir.
and integration. It makes conflict so much more unlikely. So I think there's no magic solutions here.
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, what is the alternative for the GCPOA? Is there any other?
No.
Because I haven't seen it. Is anybody going to come with a super agreement that suddenly will solve
Magic power.
everything? Nothing
Yes, sir. Yes.
of that
Absolutely.
kind is available.
Correct.
The
Correct.
only option is long time work. And I think this initiative of a framework for regional cooperation may look like a visionary project, may
Yes, sir.
seem something that is unrealistic or naive. But at the end of the day, these are the initiatives that build the future. So it took us over 40 years. Now we had our 60th anniversary of the European Union. But until the Maastricht Treaty, there were 40 years of building a project.
Correct. Correct.
So I think at the end of the day, in this region, it will have to be something like that. It will have to be.
Let's hope for the best for everyone. So peace will be obviously win-win situation for everyone. That's
and
just
it
a
will not
fact.
come in one day.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we run out of time. That's unfortunate. And I'm personally, on personal level, I'm very, very happy talking to Your Excellency. If you have a final word and farewell for our viewers,
Well,
unfortunately, we're going to miss you in Iraq. Hopefully, we'll see you soon. Inshallah.
You will probably see me soon. You
I
know,
will love
they say
I will
in
love
Egypt
to.
they say who drinks from the Nile
Yeah.
always comes back.
Fact. This is Digital Farah. We have 2 Niles.
I drank from Basra, so I think
Excellent.
that
That
qualifies
we'll never
more
forget.
than.
Okay.
So I think that yes, Iraq will remain very much present in my memory. It is a place I leave many friends. I leave to one of the most important professional experiences in my career.
Yes, sir.
And Iraq has given me a lot in terms of understanding, of experience. So I'm sure that our paths will cross again.
Hopefully, inshallah.
And,
Inshallah. We wish you all the
and-
best anywhere you go.
And I will always be looking at Iraq's progress with a lot of attention. I have a lot of faith in the future of this country. I think it is
Hopefully.
playing an important role.
Excellent.
And it will be the cornerstone of a new security architecture for the region. So I know it's not going to be easy. I know you're going to go through a lot of challenges in the near future. But I can see that Iraqi leadership is convinced that their path, and they are determined to follow this path. And in this path, the European Union will certainly be a trusted partner, because at the end of the day, we both have a lot to lose if this does not work.
We are very honored to have a partner and friend like yourself and the European Union as a whole. Thank you so very much for your time and your kindness,
Thank
dear
you.
Ambassador. Thank you very
Pleasure.
much once again. Thank you,
so
sir.
much.
Thank you, sir. That was our dear viewers. That was our interview with the European Union delegation ambassador to Iraq, Mr. Ramon Blecua. Thank you so very much. I will see you next time. Thank you.